What's going on, everyone? We have a big week ahead of us. This week will be one of the craziest for earnings, and we have a lot of other great information to talk about and a lot of awesome setups for this week. Towards the end of today's video, we have a $4.5 million trade that you will not want to miss. Normally, we don't talk about trades this big, but 4.5 million, so it's definitely pretty big. Make sure to stick with us. But besides that, Tom, let's get right into it.
Yeah, 100%. The market actually did pretty well on Friday, Mike, and we actually got a pretty big pop up early on with the banks actually having pretty good moves on their earnings, which was fantastic. So, we saw Bank of America move up. They're actually reporting earnings this week, but JP Morgan had a fantastic earnings report, ran all the way up to 139. And then Citigroup also had a huge report along with other stocks on Friday. So it was amazing to see those banks report and come in as positive as they did. And that pushed up a lot of stocks in the market. You can see the SPY popped up a lot early on, but then actually fell off and kind of closed around right where we opened. So it ended up not being the biggest day for the SPY despite those banks, but we did have a lot of good movement across a lot of the tech sectors. So like Nvidia popped up in a lot of other stocks, and going to the heat map, it was pretty mixed. We did have some of those tech stocks pop off, but like I said, very mixed across the board. The banks did pretty well, but other than that, it was like I said, the SPY didn't really do too much. But talking about this week, Mike, we should have plenty of stuff to talk about and stuff to watch for on the radar. So on the calendar for this week, there isn't anything too crazy. There is some home numbers or something like that coming out. But the big thing to watch for is going to be all these Fed speakers here. So there's going to be a bunch of Fed speakers speaking this week before a blackout period ahead of the next FOMC meeting. So that's going to be pretty important. They could end up making statements about possibly raising or lowering rates or etc. So we'll have to see what exactly they say, Mike. But there's a lot of stuff on the calendar this week.
Absolutely. And by far, the biggest thing is that earnings schedule. So let's get right into that. We're loaded this week. We got Schwab on Monday. I know a lot of people were looking at them, but some of the more exciting ones come later in the week. We got Netflix on Tuesday after close. Good old Tesla on Wednesday after close. We got TSMC on Thursday before open, American Express on Thursday before open. It's just like a very big week. I literally named only a couple of them, but when you got two powerhouses like Netflix and Tesla set to report in the middle of the week, things are about to get exciting.
Yeah, they really are. And I would say, Mike, my favorite one of the week obviously is going to be Tesla. That's going to be the biggest stock probably reporting this week. It's probably going to garner the most attention. Maybe Netflix will come in and Taiwan Semiconductors might come close. Maybe some of the banks as well with all that stuff going on. But everybody in the market loves Tesla. And I will say, Mike, they've been having some issues lately. They've been having to cut prices because obviously sales haven't been going quite as well as they've hoped. And we'll have to see how some of these car companies do because honestly, it's not looking too good based off all the price cuts and everything that we've been seeing. Hopefully those price cuts help them out, though, over the next couple months.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's because, they'll have record sales numbers, but then the problem is that, they're offering more and more discounts like every couple of weeks or so, where it's really starting to cut into their margin. So we'll see what happens there. But I will say I'm actually very excited to see how Netflix does on earnings. So Netflix is another, crazy moving stock, just like you talked about, and it's up over 100% just over the past couple months. Literally a couple months ago, or I guess actually a year ago at this point, it just flew by. Netflix was sitting around $162 after falling from like 700. So it fell out of the sky, but now we're starting to see like a decent recovery back up. We're lingering right around 340 or so, and I'll tell you, Netflix's earnings have been some of the craziest over like the past year to year and a half. They've had some brutal gap downs, about a year ago, but they kind of have been turning things around, and it's been mostly bullish.
Yeah, it really has. And it's been some amazing uptrends here ever since like July of last year. So I really like this report. And if we start to get above this big resistance around 370 to 375 or 380 here, I think that we could start to get a pretty good uptrend going again. This has been a pretty nice play here. And you can actually see that's a pretty good trend line down there at the bottom that we're continuing to bounce off of. So I'll definitely be keeping Netflix on the radar too. And Netflix will probably even affect Disney, because Disney Plus has those subscriber numbers as well. And they're both in the streaming sector. So Disney Plus Disney will probably end up moving a little bit in sympathy with Netflix too.
Good stuff. So if we go back to the earnings schedule just for 1 second, feel free to screenshot this, guys. We have a very exciting week ahead of us, and we just touched on just a couple of them. Like if we look a little deeper, we have, Bank of America on Tuesday. You got Goldman on Tuesday before market open as well. Interactive Brokers. There's a lot. AT&T, just to name a few. So be ready for a lot of volatility in that sense. Earnings season is back back on the schedule again, luckily. Now,
yeah, definitely.
Now, one thing that is definitely worth noting though, Tom, is, and this is kind of scary, while earnings revenue for this earnings season is actually expected to be pretty good, a lot of analysts are expecting a nasty drop in profit margins all across the board. And the main reason for this is, the economy actually is slowing down, and on top of that, these companies are facing a lot of increased costs. And then on top of that, a lot of these companies are also offering discounts as well, and that just cuts into the profit margin. So check this out. Analysts expect first quarter earnings to be ugly, with profits for the S&P 500 companies falling 8%. But they also see this as the low point. So that's very interesting. And this drop in margins is actually the biggest since the COVID pandemic. Now, it's also worth noting is, when you have the increased costs, but you also combine that with like discounts, that definitely hurts the profit margin. This is affecting all companies from Nike selling shirts to Tesla selling electric vehicles. A lot of companies are, reducing those prices. So very interesting. And I guess the $1 billion question, Tom, is, will bulls be able to, be, I guess you could say, empathetic and get past this profit margin slump?
Yeah, and I don't really think that they'll be able to be honest, Mike. Like some of these companies, if they report bad enough earnings, it's going to be rough. But then again, those outlooks will also be very, very important. And I feel like that it's also going to be a sector by sector issue here. So, for example, like banks, we're actually reporting pretty good. JP Morgan last week reported nicely. So maybe Bank of America and Charles Schwab will do a little bit better this week than some of the other stocks. Whereas maybe like Lockheed Martin, which is like a war stock, might not do as well. So obviously I feel like, there's going to still be like sector by sector differences here. But overall, it sounds like they're expecting a pretty big drop, Mike. And, as we know, bulls sometimes just don't care. Exactly like what we've seen with Tesla. Tesla is one of those stocks a lot of people love. Even whenever Tesla has a lot of bad news and a lot of bad downtrends, a lot of the bulls still love it and still have the argument, well, hey, in the long term, they're going to do great because, they're coming out with their Tesla semi trucks and solar panels and all types of stuff. So sometimes, the market is a little bit unhinged, Mike. And as we know, and it's definitely going to be crazy to see what happens this week because there are just so many big reports and it's big sectors too. Like we have the vehicles with Tesla, Netflix with the streaming, banks, Taiwan Semiconductors for chips, AT&T for like logistics and not logistics, I guess, kind of like, wireless carriers. So, there's just so many out there this week.
You know it. And what is a good thing, though, is if we go back to the charts, like you touched on for a second, those bank stocks set the tone on Friday. Bank of America, JP Morgan, Citigroup, they had some very big moves to the upside, and we can't ignore that. I know there was a ton of fear with the banking industry, especially this quarter, and it's like, to see the reactions that we saw, that is something that can't be ignored. So it's like, those were some big moves, and it's a great way to just set the tone for earnings season.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that some of these other banks this week will be amazing. But, it's not every day, Mike, that JP Morgan leads my watch list even on an earnings day. They were up 7.55% on Friday. It's pretty rare to see JP Morgan up like that. Their average percent rise is only 1%. So it went up about 700 percent higher, Mike. That's pretty insane there.
All right. Well, Tom, let's get right into some setups for this week. And while we're already on the topic of bank stocks, I'm actually looking at Citigroup for a potential earnings continuation play. So, normally in setups where you have like earnings and especially, a move like we saw, it is not, uncommon to see continuations over the course of a couple days. I mean, look at Citigroup's past. Like a lot of times when you see nice moves to the upside or even the downside, you will see continuations after the report. So that's what I'm looking for Citigroup. I'm just looking for it to like hold its positive momentum and just slowly grind higher over this next week. We'll see what happens, but especially if other earnings are good or at least have good reactions, and as long as other bank stocks are somewhat bullish, this can be like a nice couple day play.
Yeah, and I really like this setup, and there we are getting close to a big resistance on Citigroup. And I will actually go back to the last earnings, Mike. You said it perfect. It can continue up with a nice slow grind. And look at this on whenever they reported last on Friday the 13th on back in January, they ran up the next day, hit resistance, traced down for a couple days, but then blasted up and continued on that uptrend. So just be a little bit wary of that resistance there. But I love the setup overall, and I feel like it could definitely have a potential move kind of like that, if not even just blasting through 50 with how these banks are moving, because it's been a crazy past few weeks for him. It's good to see him flying up like that. But Tesla, I think, looks pretty good this week, Mike. They're going to be reporting earnings. So I feel like that maybe on Monday and Tuesday, we could maybe play Tesla for a pre-earnings move. We are actually bouncing off 180 down here at the bottom. Now, I would not trade this past Tuesday because Tesla's going to be reporting Wednesday night. I would only do Monday and Tuesday there. Seriously, it's going to get pretty risky with Tesla after that. But there's a big resistance here right around 186, and we hit it actually on Friday and Thursday. So if we break above there, I'll watch for some calls.
All right, good stuff. Another stock I'm watching pretty closely is Meta. And this is probably not in the way you think. It is so overextended to the upside, and I'm just looking for it for a rejection. There's also some pretty strong resistance in this $220 to $225 level. So like if I see that the movement is just slowing down, I might grab some put options that'll also kind of act as a hedge if shit hits the fan with other earning stocks.
I'll say, Mike, I've been waiting for Meta to fall down here for so long. It's kind of been making me angry because I want to keep averaging into my shares, but I'm not averaging in right here. I'm definitely waiting for a bit more of a drop back down. But man, this is a crazy stock. It's been seriously running so much from the low to where it is on or where it was on Friday. It's up 150% plus. So yeah, definitely crazy, Mike. I am waiting for a pullback as well. My last play of the day is going to be TTWO, Take Two Interactive. This one's a little bit different. It's kind of like Meta in the way that it's just been straight up running for the past few months. Since November, it's pretty much been just slowly grinding higher. I do like this one. It's slowly grinding higher. It's a gaming stock, and we're starting to see a lot of these tech stocks continue to move up. So I think TTWO can keep going, and honestly, I like this stock for the long term, and I think that where it is now is a decent spot to start picking up shares because, as we all know, Mike, whenever Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out, this one will probably be pretty crazy.
True that. But Tom, it is now time for the momentum plays. With the first one, we have Amazon to the upside.
Yeah, so many stocks just keep going. Amazon's back above $100 here. Go ahead and make them break that high of Friday right around 103.20. I would say 103, but that little extension there is a little bit scary.
Good stuff. With the next one, we have Palantir also to the upside.
PLTR, I love this one, Mike. They're almost back up to 9. If they break above $8.90, which was a huge resistance from Friday, watch them to the upside.
And with the last one, we have Apple, and we need both directions.
AAPL, yeah, very mixed here, kind of like Amazon setup. Go ahead and make them fall under 163.80 to the downside. If they break under that, I think that there could be a pretty good play on Apple puts. But if Apple ends up exploding up above 165.70 or just 165.80, go ahead and watch for calls to the upside there. There was a lot of wicks in after hours last week where we extended up in after hours there.
Good stuff. So you guys heard Tom. We have that downside level on Apple first. If it breaks below that, we're looking at it for a potential day trade down. But we also have that potential upside level as well. If it rips above that, we are looking for a potential day trade to the upside. And then we can't forget about good old Palantir and Amazon. Also for potential upside plays. If they break those levels, there's opportunity. But Tom, it is now time for the $4.5 million trade of the day. Normally we don't have trades this big, but it's pretty interesting. We are looking at DBRG. $4.5 million was put into the 15 strike calls that expire on January 19th of 2024. There's a lot of time with these ones. This is basically a global digital infrastructure company. So they're involved in a lot of stuff like cell towers, data centers, all that stuff, right? Everything that's involved in that industry. And, $4.5 million to put into the 15 strike calls. This is a very bullish trade where the risk is relatively small to the potential reward. Of course, do your own research before considering playing this, but I just think the overall risk to reward ratio is pretty good. When you look at the chart, I think it looks decent. It's been pretty brutal over like the past couple of months especially, but the downtrend has slowed down a lot, and it is showing some signs of bottoming. So, over the past year, it has highs of like $31 almost. Right now, it's lingering around $11.70. So I definitely like the risk reward ratio. And I think the biggest thing with this one is that it can take some time. I'm not necessarily expecting this stock to, touch $18 this week, but maybe some great news comes out, or maybe they have awesome earnings soon. That can change things. So very interesting setup.
Yeah, it really is. There's a lot of consolidation down here at the bottom, right around this $11 support. And they even touched $10, which was perfect down there a little bit earlier back in March as well. So I'll definitely be watching this one for this week, Mike. That's a lot of money, 4.4 million. I'll definitely be watching it for even the next few months. This is out to January 19th of the end of, January 19th of 2024, pretty much. So they would hold this hopefully through, maybe November, December, somewhere like that this year, depending on if this stock flies up or not right away. But I do like that support down there at 11. And I feel like even just on a technical level, a lot of buyers have been coming in right there. And it almost, I'm not going to say it's perfect here, Mike, because it's not, but line. And then we even almost have like a head there for almost like a nice inverse head and shoulder setup.
All right, good stuff. So definitely keep a close eye on this play. $4.5 million into a trade like this is not something we see every day. But Tom, I am pumped for the week. Earnings season is back with some serious momentum. So do you have any last minute thoughts or anything before we close out?
Yeah, just don't forget to screenshot this. There's going to be so many big reports coming out. And just one last thing is that we are actually going to have some data coming out on Tuesday with China. So watch out Tuesday with the China stocks. There's probably going to be some crazy movement with Baba, Queb, JD, Baidu, Tencent, which is TCEHY. There's a whole bunch of them out there, but keep your eyes on China stocks on Tuesday. We'll probably talk about this a little bit more tomorrow as well.
Boom. Last but not least, if you guys are not already subscribed to the channel and you like our videos, then make sure to subscribe. When you subscribe, you'll see our videos recommended to you more often, so definitely make sure to do that. And giant shout out to today's Discord member of the day. Let's get the people moving. Love that username. You've been in the chat for 2.5 years now, and your activity's been pretty good. So definitely make sure to keep it up, and thanks for being in the chat. It's awesome to have you in there. Besides that, guys, let's have an amazing week.